Hey, welcome back to the Build It Basement. Today we're working on some front idlers, a beefy one, a llama one, and a Voron one, or a raven, depending on what language you speak. Anyways, those are three of the most popular front idlers that I know of, and I have a favorite, but I have one I haven't tried yet, and I have one that I don't necessarily like. So if you're interested in finding out what those three are, how they go together, what they look like, and why I have the opinions I have, check out the video. All right, let's take a look at the three different type of idlers I'm considering. I've narrowed it down to two, but I'm not 100% sure on which I'm going to use. So let's start with the Voron idlers, which are going to be these guys right here. So if we look at the PDF document here on what we're looking at, so we have a side piece here. This is basically going to glide back and forth. We have the main housing, which comes in two pieces. You have an M5 screw that goes through, and then within that M5 screw, and I know it's kind of hard to see here, but you have your bearing stack holding it all together, and for adjustment you have an M3x40. So what we're looking at basically is our two parts here. They'll be going together like that, and then we have that will slide on like that, and then this will slide back and forth to provide tension. Parts are right there. Now let's look at the Rama idlers. So our Rama idlers right here, a little bit more complicated, but not overly so. More parts, yes. Still have housings, still have a carriage type system. They're going to move inside the housing, basically on pins. We're going to have some strong magnets in there, but basically parts list real quick. We're going to have some pins that are 16 millimeters long. We're going to have some bearings, some 695 bearings, two of them to make a stack, two M5 shims to go on either side of those bearings, and then let's see, some M3 heat inserts to go onto these right here. And then finally we're going to have our M3x10s that are going to hold some things together, and some M3x30s that are basically going to be used for the adjustments, and then our plastic parts like this, and a couple of magnets. So pin, stack, insert, housing, carriage, front plate, and then beauty plate. It's a pretty simple setup, not hugely complicated. We'll put them together. This is my choice, or my previous go-to choice, and it may still be my go-to choice. I haven't decided. Contention or contender for use in this printer is going to be the beefy idlers. Now the beefy idlers are very much similar to the Rama's idlers. The housing are almost identical. Matter of fact, they just look like a modification or a modified version of the Rama idler. They are a lot emptier, and I have some wisping in here, some little tiny pieces of tiny hairs of plastic in there, but these are the housings. Inside those we have a very different looking carriage to hold our bearings for idling back and forth and adjustments, and then we have the rest of our hardware in here, some M5s. These are mostly made with M5s and pins. There are no M3s in this setup. So my main issue, this is kind of big because I am into aesthetics, is the fact that these are asymmetrical. This is how they look on the printer themselves, or itself. They don't line up across the printer. They're one's up, one's down, and the reason for that is because the bearing stacks are different on either side. But here's the thing, is the Rama units are made so that they offset the bearing stacks when you mount these. So when you put one on, it puts the bearing stack in one direction and puts the bearing stack in the other direction when you put it on the other side. On these, the housings are identical. There's no difference at all. And I really wish there was an in-between these two things, but there is not, unless I make an in-between, and hey, I'm not calling that 100% out either. But these things are a lot more beefy. They look really good, and this is what they solve. So on a stock, they're showing a breakout point here. There are actually other points that I've had broken out on my idlers. And on the ramas, they're showing a break here. And I've actually had this specific break happen on my rama idlers. You know, when it happened, I assumed that the happening was due to, you know, maybe too cold of a print on the ABS and it just didn't have good layer adhesion, or the plastic I was using, or you know, something like that. Maybe I tightened it up so much it was plastic against plastic and just ripped it apart. But a lot of people have the same issue. So this is a very common issue that happens with Rama's idlers from what I can see. I've not had it happen a lot. I've had it happen twice. I've had it happen on one printer with one type of plastic that I printed once. So I'm not 100% sure it's a huge issue. But the Voron version, the first thing they want us to do here on page 25 is do a heat insert. Already did it. Don't need to watch me do it. You can figure that part out. The other thing we need is an M5 nut. So we got a piece, our heat insert, and our M5 nut's going to go in there, which we can toss out for now because it's going to make things complicated. So set that aside. Bearing stacks. Thick part of this, there's a thin part and a thick part. We want the thicker part. And we're going to take our M5 screw, put it through like we do, and we're going to take a shim, put it in, shoulder down, shoulder up, and another shim, like so, and then we're going to put that, snap it together like that. So we got a unit, we have our bearing stack inside there like that. And what I suggest we do, they show us here on the next page. Right now we're looking at page 26, build the stack, put together. On the next page they kind of show us this thing here where they use 2 M5 screws. I don't know how they magically are putting this piece over this whole thing with the screw still in it. It is movie magic that I can't reproduce in real life. So what I suggest is you get your part ready. We hold this like they are holding it now, which is, how are they holding this? They're holding it like so. So hold like so. We have our head down, screw up, and what I'm going to do is push. Actually, put this down first. Should I do this right? I'm going to push this through like so, just to hold this. And I got those now. They won't go anywhere, but they're a lot sloppier than they would have been otherwise. I'm going to keep that where it is, and I'm going to take my part right here. I'm going to assemble this way down at the end here, because I can do that without an M5 screw in there, because I have room with this little driver. And now that I can do that, this is kind of the hard part. I'll flip it upside down like so, carefully remove it. I'm going to slide this over. I'm going to use the same tool again. Let's see, which way do I want to go? I want to go this way. So I want to go from the bottom up, like so. And it makes it easier to do it with the driver because it's smaller than the M5. I know it makes perfect sense, but figure a point out. And then I'm going to actually just put that right on there like that. And I'm going to use that as my guide to go through. So if you're building these, there's your tip of the day. And then once I get that, I'm going to secure this. I don't want this too tight. I want it relatively loose. I want it to be able to move pretty freely. There we go. All right. And then the last thing we're going to do on this, and it's shown here again on page 27, is we have our M3, and we have our M3 washer on there. This is M3x40. This is going to go through what's going to be the front through and into that heat cert that we put in there earlier. I'm missing a driver here. All right, let's grab this. Can't find my right driver. What is going on here? Anyways, we're going to basically put this in. And this is catching on to that heat cert right there. And if we continue to pull this as we go, this would basically be our tensioning effect on this. So that is the built Voron version of the front idler. Now, the reason I don't like this, and I've mentioned it a little bit before in the beginning here, is I don't like how this has a seam where the screw goes through. That's a very much weak point to this whole thing. I also don't like that all the stress is kind of in this area, and I don't like how the bearing stack isn't really centered here. If you look, it's off to the side. This piece goes across the whole thing. One positive thing I will say is the reason they put the screw where it is right now is because it is aligned with the bearing stack, so the pressure is kind of directly in the center of the bearing stack. However, the piece that's riding in is not. So yeah, not my preferred way, but there's that one. All right, next up, let's build the Rama idler, which is right here. So for the Rama idler, and again, I've already put heat certs in here. So basically one here, those are in. Are relatively simple as well. They look a little bit complicated, but they're not. The biggest difficulty with these is not getting the screw through the bearing stack, rather it's getting the bearing stack into them. So let's look at that real quick. We're going to take our bearings, same as before. We're going to take our spacers. We're going to need our pin, and we're going to need 2 M3s. I think that's where, oh yeah, we're going to need another M3, smaller one. We'll get that when we need it. All right, so with these, basically, you're going to build your stack inside of this little compartment, which is easier said than done. My preferred way of doing it is basically to get your bearings in there one at a time, number 1, number 2, and they'll kind of hold themselves in place, and then slide in your shims or spacers, and it will just barely make it in there. And then you're going to have your pin that is going to hold this all together. And if you're having trouble getting it through, you can do the same thing you kind of did with the other one and kind of use a smaller device to wiggle that around. Now we got the pins all the way through. We have our little carriage there, and this is going to be sitting inside of the idler, or the holder here, like so. It only goes in one way, so if you try to put it in the wrong way, it won't go in, which is nice. So it goes in like that, okay? And then you have a cover piece that goes on. This cover piece has on it 2 sides, obviously. One has these little nubs, these little holes cut out of it. They're to go over the little nubs are on top of here. We're going to put a single M8 screw or an M2 right here on the top. And then we're going to put our 2 M3x30s through like so. Let me get a little help here. So now, if I continue to tighten these up, you'll see what it's doing. So there's one shortcoming to these idlers, whether it be the rama or the beefy, and that's the fact that getting constant tension between these two is relatively difficult. But what I like to do is get it to where I need it with the one, and then basically tighten up the second one until it just starts to feel the grab on it, and then you should be good. So once you have this at this point, basically you can put a beauty plate on it, and a beauty plate is like so. It's magnetic, it goes on there, holds on there. Kind of cool little logo there, don't you think? That is the logo for this build, or the, I guess the insignia, if you will. This is the Ghost Trident. This is what this printer is going to be called. I don't think I've told anybody here on video, but basically a trident upside down. Looks like a ghost, so I'm calling it the Ghost Trident. There'll be some other stuff in there too, but there's the Rama idler. Done. All right, on to number 3. Number 3 are the beefy idlers. I have not built beefy idlers, but we're going to build them now. I've never used them. Don't like the offset. Don't know if I can get over it. We'll find out. All right, so beefy idlers. Documentation tells us what we need to build them, but we don't even have a photo. We do have a CAD, so if you want to open that up in a CAD program and take a look at it, by all means, go right ahead. I'm going to try to wing it. So on the beefy idlers, we don't need heat certs. We do need a bearing stack. We do need our pins, and we're going to need 2 M5s. I think that's all we're going to need. So what do we do this hodgepodge? Well, we build a bearing stack again. This time we'll do it in the air, and we'll grab our pin and get it through there just barely, because they're pretty close on how well they fit here. Get it centered. Probably should have lubricated that before I started. All right, so I think we're pretty close right there. So we got our bearing stack here. Bearing stack is going to plop into here. Hopefully. Any luck. Ah. Gotta have a sense of humor doing this, because everybody's fingers are too big, and it doesn't matter what age you are. Alright, so there we go. And let's see if we can get that in. One side, the other side. There we go. Alright, so we got that put together, and just for reference, that is a 18mm pin that we put in there. Okay, on our Trident version. Now, the 2.4 version actually uses slightly different parts, but we're building Trident version. Total parts list are the printed parts, the 2 bearings, 2 M5s by 40s, and 2 M5 hex nuts per unit. So, all right, so we have that. This is now going to go into there, but first we have to put some M5 nuts in. And I'm guessing the best way to do this will be like so. And then, these are really simple. We're going to be putting our top on like that, and there's no beauty topper for these. I'm going to put that on like so. And pretty much that's it. That's our beefy stack. Nothing else holding that bearing in there. other than the fact that the belt's going to be going over it, which I'm comfortable with. That shouldn't pull it out. And adjustments are much like the Rama, where as we turn these, ooh, what did I do? Did I lose my nut? I did. Interesting. Okay, so may be advisable to either A, well, I guess if there's tension on this, it won't be an issue, but without tension on it, like I just did there, you're gonna lose your nut. So, and yeah, so if there's tension on it, you should be okay. But if there isn't, you're going to lose the nut at the bottom. So as we twist these down, basically that's going to tension. Now, I will say this about this beefy idler. These M5 screws feel way more robust when it comes to making that adjustment. My only problem with them, again, is the fact that once we put them on the printer, they're going to be sitting like so. One's going to be sitting high, one's sitting low. Aesthetically, it's not great, but I understand why they did it, because they're keeping everything as center as possible. Yeah. So there is the beefy. There is the Rama. And here is the Voron. Final result. Not going with the Voron. Just don't like it. It looks cool, but I don't like it. It doesn't. It has one too many flaws for me. I'll put that one aside. I really want to use the Rama idler because I haven't had trouble with it and I can do my beauty. But I got to tell you that this feels awesome. This adjustment is really nice. I don't know. I'm going to use the Ramas. Sticking with my Ramas. That's what I'm going with. You get to choose what you want to go with. Alright, so that is the Voron Trident part whatever we're on front idlers. Going with the Rama idlers, I've never had issues with them that weren't my fault from what I understand or from what I know. The beefies do look like a strong contender. They're super simple, super well engineered, because usually the most simple things are the best engineered things. But I just like how the Ramas look, so I'm going with the Ramas. So why don't you leave me a comment down below and let me know what front idlers you're choosing or which front idlers you've used. Let me know if you've had any issues with your front idlers and specifically which ones they were. More than interested in hearing everything you guys have to say, and as always, do leave comments about this production, this video, any questions you have about this build in general, anything like that. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Give me that big thumbs up, and if you're interested, why don't you go ahead and become a member as well. I will see you next time on Build a Basement.